wage that's out of poverty, violence. Ghetto housing, violence. Ignoring medical needs and health care, violence. A contempt for poverty as though people are somehow on a glorified vacation and not being affected by structural reality, violence. But listen to this last line. Even the lack of willpower to help humanity is a sick and sinister form of violence, especially when you have the power to make a difference. That's correct. So when we talk about this budget and what's going on today, we literally are talking about policy violence. 57 years ago, the night before he died, Dr. King said, nothing would be more tragic than for us to turn back now. And they were reaching into their faith when they were talking. Jesus said before he was crucified, he knew he was going to die. You've got to listen to people when they know they're going to die, because they get real truthful. Yes. And he said, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty. You gave me something to drink. Watch this. I was an immigrant. Well, yes. And you invited me in. Yes. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. He didn't say you took my health care. And he said, inasmuch as you do unto the least of these. And it's interesting, Senator Booker, if I might exegete, since we're in church, if I might exegete the text, he did not say that to individuals. He says, and the king will say to the nation. See, we've taken this text and made it about individual piety. You know, a little food on Thanksgiving, a little food Christmas, feeding a few folks. That's all right, but that's not what Jesus was talking about. And that's not what got him killed. He said to the nations. And then Isaiah, way before him, said this in Isaiah 10. I wish a lot of the people that claim that they're all about religion would really read it. In Isaiah 10, it says, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children pray. Not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y, which means if you pray at the opening session of the Senate or the House, but then after you pray P-R-A-Y, you pass a budget that prays P-R-E-Y-S on people that are vulnerable, you just canceled out your P-R-A-Y. Yes. 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 So, and then our Constitution says that we are to establish justice. I think what that means, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just guessing here, that the preamble of the Constitution in a sense says every policy we pass, it ought to be like a grid on top of it. And we ought to ask this question. Does this policy establish justice? Does it provide for the common defense? Does it promote the general welfare? Does it ensure domestic tranquility? And then later on, does it provide equal protection under law? And if the policy doesn't meet that standard, then it is constitutionally inconsistent, morally indefensible, and economically insane. And so when Trump and Musk and Johnson and them are signing unconstitutional executive order and illegally firing people and trying to this great big ugly bill, great big ugly bill, ugly bill, we have to speak up, and we have to speak up. I'm talking about for the family. In fact, not only do we need to speak up, we need to bring them here. We need to come here. We need to put a face on who we're talking about. The family that lives not too far from here who watched agents of the government snatch their father and disappear him. Sick people in South Africa who showed up one morning to get medicine and keep them alive, and they were told they couldn't receive them no more because USAID is gone. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the folk, even before all of this, 800 people were dying a day from poverty. 800 people, 295,000 people a year, already dying from poverty. 140 million people in poverty and low wage. Not just poverty, poverty and low wage. Now what you're talking about there is 51% of all our children, 43% of the adults. You're talking about 26 million black people, 66 million white people, 68% Latinos, so forth and so on. That was already happening. They're already poor and hurting. We're talking about those people that this budget would only exacerbate the suffering. This one big, ugly bill is destructive and it's deadly. Because policies are not benign. Now, policy don't kill you quick, but they kill you over time. That's why you can measure now how many people actually die from poverty, and there's all kinds of research on it, because over time, constant neglect is a form of violence and political abuse. Yes. So this budget says, this budget, if it were to pass, what we've researched says that $800-some billion for Medicaid, that's 36 million Americans who will lose Medicaid. Policy violence. That's talking about somebody's mama, somebody's daddy, somebody's child. That's talking about rural hospitals. That's talking about people like me with disability. That's talking about people trying to make it. 15 million children that could go hungry because you're pulling back SNAP. You're talking about communities that are going to lose federal housing assistance. And we need to say it clear, and I'm going to ask Congress to do this. Make sure that when every time you mention these numbers, y'all got these good researchers up here, that you disaggregate it by race so that they don't think, you're not even talking about black folk. Yeah. Or brown. In fact, they're talking about majority white folk, and then in the South, sure enough, majority. And we're talking about places where if this assistance wasn't here, people, that's why there's such a rise now in the country, because people thought, oh, it's just going to hurt them. And that's why we cannot allow this budget to go untalked about. Forces that this budget was untalked about, that nobody knew what was going on. They don't want you to target this. But we have to target this. We're talking about a foolish budget plan that aims to make laws across the whole government. We're talking about cutting departments. We're talking about empowering the ability to deport people by putting $86 billion more in the defense budget that the Pentagon doesn't even want, didn't even ask for. And what we have to say in this moment, say all of us. All of us, take your hands off our Medicaid, take your hands off our Medicare, take your hands off our voting rights, take your hands off our living wages, take your hands off our public education, and take your hands off of our lives and let us live. Because in this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is supposed to be what not only is thought about, but policies allow it to actually happen. To actually happen. And we need to join as black, white, brown, Asian, native, gay, straight, whoever you are, young, old, rural, we have to say we're not going anywhere. We are America, and we're not going anywhere. And when you have lastly these greedy technocrats with a supremacy foundation who want to rule the country and believe in things like apocalyptic fascism and democratic feudalism, you know, where you want to destroy something and then say, I told you it was going to fall apart. Well, you made it fall apart. That's what apocalyptic is. And they want to get it by quick, move it. We cannot allow that. We have to come by time. That's why tomorrow, in the nation's capital, actually this evening, we're doing a sermon right over at the Supreme Court. But tomorrow, hundreds and hundreds of clergy are coming, and Senator, we're coming in full vestments. Yes. And bringing impact to people. And we've done research. We've got a research, and we're going to give to every member of Congress showing the high moral stakes and negative reality of this budget. And we're going to talk about, we're bringing impact to people, and we're coming in to deliver it. And we're coming to the rotunda. And we're coming in full vestments. The reason why we put on full vestments is because there's a story that says in South Africa one time, Bishop Tutu and some other clergy got together and they put on full vestments and went into a courtroom. And one of the courts told that one of the judges said, why are they here like that? And the other one said, I don't know, but I know apartheid is over now. And he said, no, it's not. We're in power. He said, yeah, but the clergy have decided that this is a part of their ministry now. That means that they've decided that this is holy work, that this is not something they can choose not to do. So tomorrow, we're coming to say this is something we cannot choose not to do. That we, every pulpit, we've been talking to over 9,000 clergy and growing across this country, that we have to have pulpits that are on fire and people of all different faiths that will come and say, in this moment, the only way a wannabe king gets to be king, or wannabe dictators, or wannabe people that want to just control everything get to do that is if we bow. And somebody has to come and say, our DNA won't let us bow. We bow only to God, we bow only to that which we see as ultimate reality, but we cannot and we will not bow. This is big party issue. This is an outright battle for civilization itself. It is an outright battle for democracy itself, and we must declare that we will not bow. And every now and then you need to look at a neighbor and say, neighbor, I just can't do it. I just can't bow. I cannot bow when I see people hurting sick people. I cannot bow when I see people taking people's wages. I cannot bow when I see people who ought to be lifted up being torn down. I cannot bow when I see billionaires to hurt the poor. I cannot bow when people in this building raise their salary but keep everybody else's salary and poverty and wages. I can't bow. I can't bow. I just can't. They may not change right now. I may not have the vote, but I can't bow. Moral dissent means you have to have a moral dissent until such time as you have the political power. But the moral thing. And so maybe it's time to stand tall. And maybe it's time to mobilize our rights. No, not maybe. It is time.
Yes.
Yes.
It's time, I think, to have mass pray-ins. It's time, when election comes, to have a labor strike day so that everybody on election can surely go and vote. It's time to mobilize the biggest potential voting bloc in this country, which is poor and low-wage infrequent voters. It's over 30 million of them, and there's not a state in this country, that poor people don't make up at least 30% of the electorate, and in so-called battleground states, over 43% of the electorate. And the number one reason they don't vote is they say nobody talks to us anymore. Nobody. Well, we have to stop that. We have to talk to them. So Linda Lake has said that is the place in most of the battleground states. If you just registered 10%, well, no, you don't even have to register because many of them are already registered. If just 10% of poor people were mobilized around an agenda, not even around a party, around an agenda, they could fundamentally shift. And we can no longer have people say, well, these infrequent voters, we don't have time to mobilize them. If you don't have time to mobilize them, you don't have time to save this democracy. Because God makes it so. Every now and then, Senator Booker, every now and then, Congressman Jeffries, you never heard anything else this old country preacher said. Every now and then, God makes it so the stones that the builders rejected are the only ones that can build a new society. Psalm 118 says, the stones that the builders rejected have now become the chief cornerstone. And so that means that all the rejected folk, the sick folk, the handicapped folk, the poor folk, from Mississippi to Montana, from New York to Nevada, from California to the Carolinas, that is the hope of this nation. If we mobilize the poor and low wages, and then they connect with people of conscience, people of wealth with conscience, and others, that is the power. The stones that the builders have rejected. Any of y'all know what it's like to be rejected? Yes. How about reject because of who you love? Raise your hand. Rejected because of where you come from. You know some folk that have been rejected? Raise your hand. Because of denial of health care, or rejected because of their poverty. If all the rejected folk come together, the scriptures say that they produce a power. And this is what it says finally. When they come together and they shift the foundations of society, this is the last part of that verse. This is the day that the Lord has made. Amen. When we all get together and lift every child, when we all get together and make sure the sick are taken care of, when we all get together and make sure people are paid a decent and a living and a loving wage, when we all get together and stop injustice, push for justice, when we all get together, this is the day that the Lord has made.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
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 We're not sitting in the congregation right now, but Reverend Barber just took us to church.
Yeah.
And we're thankful. Let's give it up for Reverend Barber. Moral, principled, powerful, prophetic leadership.
Thank you.
All right, we're going back to our seats. Anybody can come up to the steps, join us.
You are amazing, Claire. You are amazing. You are amazing. You are amazing. Honey?
What's that? Yes. Oh, yeah, yes.
Citizens sitting out. I love that. I love that.
Senator. Hello. Come on down here and give me a hug. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course. You got a minute to do a little spiel?
I don't. We got to get back to our program. Unfortunately, we got the next speaker here.
Okay.
So forgive me.
Let's do a selfie.
Sit.
Yes.
Hi, I got my kids. They're going to join you. That one. You guys want to say hi? This is Leader Jeffries.
All right, people, we're getting back to the steps. We thank Reverend Barber. One more round of applause for the Reverend.
Come on down. This is Senator Booker. This is Leader Jeffries.
And I'm going to let Leader Jeffries help you sit down. I'm just going to remind people why we are here. Senator Jeffries and I, Congressman Jeffries, Leader Jeffries and I started we're reeling in our 5th hour here. We sat down here before the sun came up. And we said we're going to do an old-fashioned sit-in on a Sunday to talk about the moral underpinnings of our nation, the values that bring us together, that hold us together. We're going to harken back to the people that the founders drew on to do this great experiment. The commitments we have to one another, the arc of the moral universe that this nation, every generation has grabbed hold of it and bent it more towards justice, liberty and justice for all, that ideal. And how that after 2 weeks on recess, Congress comes back tomorrow. And when they get back to this House, Republican leadership has said they're going to be pushing this bill that cuts billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from services and support to Americans in order to give tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. As Leader Jeffries said, renewing these tax cuts from the Trump years, over 80% accrue to the top 1%. And what they're doing in the shadow of the moral might of America and our religious traditions is that they're cutting food from the hungry, health care from the sick, support services for the elderly, resources for the disabled, and so much more. From meals on wheels to public education under assault, under attack. And the question is not what they are trying to do. The question is, who are we as a people? Will we sit idly by, or will we rise up, speak up, stand up, and with our nonviolent heart and creative action, can we take this moral moment and ensure that we protect our fellow Americans? That is where we are. And Leader Jeffries and I said we would come out here and sit for a good long time. As I said, we're rolling into our 5th hour soon. And invite people to join us physically. If you're watching online, this plaza is beginning to fill up. We have more and more people sitting down. God, American University, you all are stalwarts. You were here in the cold hours. You were here when it was chilly. Now it's warm and easy. Come on out. But we're also asking people who are watching online to DM us messages from you. Our team is going to collect them all. We're going to start reading some of them. Maya, who was out here, was reading the names of people, speaking people's names, speaking to the experience of Americans who are struggling right now and face real challenge. And so we're inviting different speakers to come out. On my left is another senator. We're keeping count. There might be a little bit of a rivalry between the House and the Senate. I think the score right now is senators outnumbering House members, and there's only 100 of us. But maybe you can do your rebuttal. You can reclaim your time, and then introduce our guest.
Let's be clear, we're on the House side of the Capitol right now.
That's true.
This is the people's house. Now, Reverend Barber mentioned that this is a time for us to put principles over party. Principles over party. It reminds me, I think that's a powerful moment for us. Reminds me of a letter that Ulysses Grant was said to have sent at the start of the Civil War. Of course, the great general who subsequently became president. And at that moment of great turmoil in the country literally tearing itself apart, Grant wrote that whatever my prior political positions have been, my prior opinions have been up until this point, I have but only one objective now. And said, we have a government and laws and a flag, and they must all be sustained. Government, laws, and a flag, and they must all be sustained. And then he said something even deeper than that, because at that time in American history, there were multiple parties. We're in a two-party system right now, but there were multiple parties. And what Grant said is, there are but two parties in America right now, patriots and traitors. And at this moment, when Reverend Barber talked about the need for us to put principle over party, we're calling upon our Republican colleagues as we approach this budget to put the American people first, to center the American people, and the principle of making life better for everybody. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, this is an American moment, and we need the American people to show up and stand up and speak up and partner with us, and we're going to get through this moment. We're going to end this national nightmare, and we're going to make sure America can become the best version of herself. That's what all of you represent right now on the steps of the People's House. And so we've been joined by a great advocate, a great leader, someone who actually does trace her roots to the House of Representatives in terms of her career. So we put that on the house tag, Corey.
You got it. I got it. You get to
Minnie Timaraju has been a long-time champion for reproductive freedom. Thankful that she's joined us here with her two children, who I think she'll introduce. But right now she is the president of Reproductive Freedom for All, a great champion, a powerful voice, and an American leader. Thank you, Minnie, for joining us.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you, Senators. You want to say hi? He thought about it. He thought about giving a speech. This is my thank you, Senator Tubbs. It's great to see you. Thank you, Senator Booker. Can I keep going? Oh, okay, thank you. This is Krishna, and this is Satya, and they are twin boys. And you know they wanted to come to the Capitol today. Krishna, I'm going to ask you to let me finish. No, you're gonna let me finish. Thanks, babe. I wanted them to come to the Capitol today because I wanted to talk about Medicaid. And one of the things that's the most shocking, and I think you've been talking about it already today, about the proposed cuts to this budget, which frankly could only be found in Medicaid, but there's no way to do what they're talking about doing without gutting Medicaid, would have a dramatic impact on our nation's kids, disturbingly so. And I think there's an untold story about Medicaid and how important it is for reproductive freedom. You know, I was just in Arizona with your colleague, Ruben Gallego, and we did a Medicaid town hall in a congressional district that I think we have some interest in. And we were talking to a lot of moms who, because they had Medicaid coverage, and Medicaid covers almost 50% of births in Arizona, 50%, and now has recently been expanded to cover postpartum, they've had a dramatic decrease in maternal mortality rates in Arizona because of Medicaid. I think it's so important to tell that story, especially when we have a maternal health crisis for Black and brown moms, right? So it's so critical that we protect this program. The other thing I wanted to say about Medicaid is how many family planning services are covered by Medicaid across the country. So STI testing, birth control, cancer screenings, cancer treatments. And when you think about losses and cuts to Medicaid, I want you to think about two things. I want you to think about clinics in your community. I want you to think about Planned Parenthood. We know the extreme right's been going after Planned Parenthood, trying to shut down Planned Parenthood. We know Donald Trump knows how deeply unpopular that is. But they can do it through Medicaid. They can shut down the nation's safety net family planning programs, including your Planned Parenthood clinic, the most trusted provider of care in this country. Most Americans got their first health care out of Planned Parenthood. They can shut it down through these Medicaid cuts. And when they shut down these clinics, even if you never had to have Medicaid, you might need it one day, but even if you didn't have to have it, the impact it's going to have on the critical care infrastructure in your state could mean you don't have care anymore. So that's what we've been running around the country talking about with a lot of your colleagues, and we're going to keep fighting.
And I want Leader Jeffries to talk about why we are confident that this what they have referred to the Energy and Commerce Committee creates a conclusion, not from us as Democrats, but from the Congressional Budget Office. I want you to discuss that, but I just want to say that what you're spelling out here is that so many of the providers, the frontline providers of care in America, are providing services at margins that don't exist.
That's right.
That if the reimbursement rates do not cover the services that people are now providing, and so people like Planned Parenthood and others often have to rely on donations just to fill the gap. And so if you cut Medicaid, forget what Leader Jeffries is going to describe to the extent we're talking about cutting, but a 5 or 10% cut endangers health care for millions of Americans. But even worse than that is a lot of the hospitals in the most remote areas in our rural counties already operate at a serious deficit. That they will face closures from rural areas in New Jersey, all throughout the Midwest. We are already hearing stories of what this will mean, because to pull out one of the financial rebars of what hospitals use to sustain the architecture of their total services. So even if you don't rely on Medicaid, you can still be affected by those cuts, by the very hospital you rely on. And remember, this comes in the wake of a president who is taking away Social Security offices. This relies on a president who is attacking veterans' care and veterans' services. We're seeing them taking away the kind of services we rely on, and the question we ask again is why? Why are you doing this? Why? Well, we know why. Because they want to give greater tax cuts that will overwhelmingly accrue to the wealthiest Americans. How do we know? It's because that is the 2017 tax cuts that they are trying to renew and even add on top of. They gave tax cuts to the wealthiest corporations, who have seen historic profits even before those tax cuts, and to the wealthiest Americans, who for the last quarter century have seen a growth in wealth that has been stratospheric. Cutting services to hundreds of millions of Americans while giving the wealthiest 1% tax cuts is immoral, and that's again why we're sitting here on the Sunday before this work period saying we're just going to sit down, open up a live feed, moral discussion, and I'm going to hand it over to my partner in this, Leader Jeffries.
Thank you, Reverend Booker. But we're so thankful for all of you, the American people, who've come out at a critical moment, and we'll hear from our senator momentarily, who's joined us. But we're on the cusp of entering into an intense period where we're working hard to stop this reckless Republican budget. It only takes 4 Republicans on the House side and 4 Republicans on the Senate side to join us. And we can stop this reckless effort to enact the largest Medicaid cut in American history. Now, as Corey indicated, despite what they've tried to say up until this point, and they're going to try to deceive the American people, I think maybe in early to mid-February, it had already frozen Medicaid disbursements across the country. Actually, this was the January Office of Management and Budget unconstitutional freeze. They froze it. American people rose up. We were able to fight to get that rescinded. And then what happened is Trump goes into the Oval Office and he has the nerve to say that we're going to love and cherish Medicaid. They are going to destroy and undermine Medicaid. That's the truth. Now they're claiming, to be the last point, we'll go to the next speaker, they're claiming that this is all about waste, fraud, and abuse. Now we believe that government can of course be more efficient, nonprofits can be more efficient, the private sector can be more efficient. We're all about trying to make sure we have the most efficient and effective government, the use of your taxpayer dollars is possible. But we know their excuse is phony because they, for instance, have spent time, Elon Musk has spent time targeting allegedly waste, fraud, and abuse in Social Security, your earned benefit. The average Social Security recipient lives on $65 a day.
Exactly.
Elon Musk right now has contracts with the federal government that make about $8 million a day.
Exactly.
If you want to go after waste, fraud, and abuse,
Yes.
start right there.
Yes.
Start right there. So this is not about waste, fraud, and abuse. It's about them taking your money and your health care so they can enact massive tax cuts for their billionaire donors. Let's thank
Yes.
Minnie.
Thank
Thank you, Minnie.
You want to close out one more thing?
Close out.
Thank you guys, and thank you guys for your patience. I promised some ice cream after this, so we're going to go. Can I finish? Yes, I can. It's going to be really short. So in the wake of the Dobbs decision, I just wanted to connect the dots for so many folks, right? You were in the streets, you were marching. You know, our leaders here have been incredible champions for fixing this crisis. 21 states with abortion bans and restrictions. 21 states where women can barely get access to care. And then we're going to compound the crisis with these cuts. So I want you to put it in context that we are already in a massive crisis for reproductive health and freedom in this country.
Yes.
And I know Ruth's going to speak in a minute about how it's impacting moms, but it's all connected. We can't be a nation where we've taken away people's fundamental freedoms and bodily autonomy and we're forcing birth, and then we're going to deny them prenatal and postpartum care, and we're going to be sentencing women to death. Disabled. I want to just say, it's not too extreme to say, we're sentencing women to die, and we're sentencing children who are sick to lives without their parents. So thank you all for being here. I'm so grateful for your leadership. I'm so grateful for all of you.
I want to give up for me one more time. A frontline, a foot soldier of justice, and these extraordinary sons of hers. I'm happy they got a chance to see that. That they stole all the handsomeness for themselves, left Hakeem and I with none of it. Oh my gosh! Thank you guys so much. All right, as Ruth Martin is going to center herself when Minnie leaves, I want to let him, I'm going to ask him to stay for a little longer, but I want to say right over my shoulder, a man with greater seniority. That's why he's sitting on the higher step. He's holding it down on the northern side of the Capitol. Is Senator Brian Schatz from the great state of Hawaii. And Brian is a man of great humility and a man of deep conviction. He is a moral man, and I'm grateful he's here. We're going to hear from Moms Rising real quick. Not real quick, take your time. Hakeem and I didn't put a back end on this. We are going to stay here. That's why we hope more people will come. The sun is climbing. We're almost at our 5th hour. We're going to stay as speakers come, and we hope that more of our colleagues will join us. But I just want to say real quick before Moms Rising speaks, Ruth, as a way of introduction to you, I just want you to know I saw something myself in the power of women organizing. It is what sustains my city in Newark. We have so many women who don't think of motherhood as biology, but think of it as a spiritual bond. Most every community in Newark has somebody that they call mom as an honorific title because they love so strong, they love so mighty. The woman that is one of the most influential in my life is a woman named Miss Virginia Morton. Miss Virginia Jones. Mom Morton was another great mother in my community. Miss Virginia Jones was a tenant president of some high-rise projects called Brick Towers. And she showed me the power of organizing with strength. And what folks know this is often when public like this, you see our public faces but not our private pain. Everybody on these steps I know has grief or hurt or worry or fear or trauma in their lives. And Miss Jones, I didn't know it as I got to know this woman we call the mother of our city. I didn't know until later that her son was murdered in the building, one of the two buildings in the 1980s. And it shook me because she remained tenant president of those buildings. She never left. She held that community together with the ferocity of her love. She was a mighty, mighty great leader. But I asked her one day, I said, why do you still live here? I know where you work. I know you could move to another neighborhood. Why didn't you ever leave? And she goes, Corey, why am I still in these buildings? I said, yes, Miss Jones. She goes, why am I still in apartment 5A? I go, yes, Miss Jones, why? She looks at me and she goes, why am I still the tenant president since these buildings were built in 1969? I go, that's electoral longevity. Yeah, why? And she looked at me and she goes, because I am in charge of Homeland Security. And then she smiled and I smiled. She didn't need a cabinet position. She didn't need a title. She didn't need a high position and a salary. She was the mother of that community because she knew where power really comes from. It comes from the courage to stand and the strength to love. And so you have an organization that represents mothers like that who are not content to stay on the sidelines or to stay in the stands. They know that democracy is not a spectator sport. It is a full court participatory endeavor. And I just want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Moms are pretty amazing, yeah? They're pretty good. They're very strong. We want to thank you, moms across the country. Moms Rising has over 1 million members across the country, and many, many of them are watching right now and are excited to see both of you standing up and championing what our families really need. We're sitting down. Standing up, sitting down, on the floor. It's story time. It's actually what I brought a couple of storybooks from our members who have taken the time to share their experiences and what this horrible budget could do to our families. How we need more people like you all to put families over billionaires. And so, as Minnie was saying before, just moments before, it's just incredibly important to our families. All of these cuts that are on the table are going to decimate our families. They're trying to undermine our public education, take away our access to health care. It's just SNAP benefits, all these things that we need to make sure that our families are thriving are in jeopardy. Why? For the sake of billionaires? It just doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense, right? It's just awful. So I'm really happy to be here today representing Moms Rising members, and I brought my daughter Beatrix to be here with me too, because while she can't yet vote, we've got several more years before that happens. Obviously, everything that happens here has an impact on her future. And Minnie's kids and kids I see down here and all of our kids. So, we're happy to be here. And these stories from our members are pretty heartbreaking. And I know you guys have been here for 5 hours now. Yeah? All right. I will. So I'm going to read you Amber's story from Ohio. Streetsboro, Ohio. Amber says, I go to school to afford a child on my own. As of now, we barely survive. With SNAP and Medicaid and the current wages most days I don't eat the meals I cook so that my child can have leftovers day. I have faced homelessness for 8 months now, waiting for a home on the Section 8 list. I have relied on federal programs and churches to get me through this far. If those programs do not exist, I would have been homeless for a year waiting for Section 8. I have no family to fall back on. It's me and my daughter alone. If they cut SNAP and Medicaid and other federal programs, it would guarantee not me being able to feed myself, but I won't be able to feed my child either. can only work part-time while going to school full-time and being a full-time single mom with no help from her father. To take on an already struggling family, to take from an already struggling family to give to a millionaire and billionaires and corporations is absolutely absurd and will very much hurt families like mine. Oh, another one. Okay, great. Sure. This one is from Melissa in Pennsylvania. The cost of living is high while unemployment wages have been stagnant. Healthcare premiums take a big chunk of that wage. I have 2 adult children with autism who still live at home. Rent is incredibly expensive. My daughter would rather save her money to buy a house than waste it on rent. She's also paying her college loan and healthcare premiums through the Pennsylvania Exchange. My son with autism receives a partial SSI payment, Medicaid, and SNAP. Without it, that would be much more difficult for us to afford groceries for a family of 4. I stopped working full-time so I could spend more time helping my son become more independent and emotionally stable. I always carried the benefits for the family since my husband works in his family's small business. COVID ended my long-term job of 22 years, and since then we have to purchase insurance through the Pennsylvania marketplace. Although I am grateful it's available to us, even the lowest premiums with a premium tax credit are almost $900 a month. I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. Biopsy, surgery, and radiation therapy cured me, but I ended up owing the hospital over $13,000. I pay them more per month than I pay for my car. They have threatened to send us to collections if we don't pay the full amount. My husband does not want to risk our credit rating, and I have to make these payments for 2 more years. We have a middle-income family, and we have worked hard, and we have paid our taxes our entire adult lives and may have to work until we die because of decisions made by this administration. Awful.
Thank you so much for your leadership and for presenting these stories, and it's going to be important for us to continue to lift up and elevate stories. We've been spending a lot of time on the Capitol steps talking about Medicaid, but Medicaid is not the only thing that is under threat, and you've done a great job in documenting that reality. In addition to the proposed efforts to try to cut health care from the American people, what they're trying to do in this budget is to cut potentially supplemental nutritional assistance by as much as $230 billion. That literally will take food out of the mouths of babies, families, children, veterans, and seniors. And you've had a lot of folks share their stories. I'll read one. This is Kat Cottonwood from Arizona. I received SNAP benefits. I had to reapply recently because I stopped receiving alimony, and I don't earn enough to make ends meet in the rural area where I live. I have a daughter in college. My daughter comes home, there is no adjustment for the added grocery bill. She will be home almost 4 months this summer, but I receive no additional benefits now that they're trying to cut. I receive no additional benefits because she lives in another state most of the year. And then she makes a profound observation: college students eat a lot. But at the end of the day, the effort literally to cut nutritional assistance is a moral outrage. And we're here sitting down on the Capitol steps urging the American people to stand up, and together we will stop this from happening.
Please stay, because I know we're now running behind because we have some speakers lining up, but the stories you have in here are so important, and everybody's not going to be able to get this. I want to read one more from a state that unfortunately sits in the shadow of New Jersey. It's called New York, if anybody hasn't heard of it. I'm sorry, we got some sibling rivalry here, but this is from Bethany, from Jackson Heights, New York. And again, the reason why I want to read this is what you said. Is like there's an irony that we are talking about Medicaid, but there's so many other things that are being cut. Support for children with disabilities. But the absurdity that this letter points out, and you'll hear her in her own voice, but this is the absurdity in our nation right now. We have a president and Elon Musk and others talk about we want to have more babies. We want to see more babies being born. But they have no intention of supporting moms who struggle in America struggle in the areas that other countries, their mothers don't worry about. The cost of childcare in America is more expensive in about half of our states than tuition at a college. The stress that a mother is put under financially is outrageous, and this woman is going to talk about it. Bethany writes, with my first child, I had to go back to work starting at 6 weeks because we don't have adequate paid family leave or maternal leave in this country. With my first child, I had to go back to work starting at 6 weeks. She was born with a birth defect and required extra, more specialized care, and none of the daycares could provide that level of support. But beyond that, none of the daycares would even take 6-week-old children. We couldn't afford a full-time nanny. I'm a preschool teacher, so we hired a nanny for part-time while my mom came down to the city a few days a week to help care for the baby. This lasted until she was able to attend preschool where I teach. I just recently had another baby while my husband and I were not allowed to have 12 weeks leave, thanks NYS. Finding a nearby daycare that we could both afford and had openings proved to be almost impossible again. This whole process is insane. We are on multiple wait lists and still have not received any spots. We are lucky in many respects because my work hours are short and my husband works from home, so we are able to get by with another part-time nanny share situation for now. But it also means we are spending a huge chunk of our income on childcare. The system is totally broken. What we should be doing is not cutting programs to support mothers, but investing more, because there's no better return on investment than investing in mothers and children in America. We want to say thank you very much for being, thank you so much, and we're grateful. And please, I hope there's a lot of moms watching this. Continue to tune in, share the link, share your stories. We're going to be recording them, go into DMs, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know we have, Brian Schatz is still here. You okay to wait for a little while long? You're okay to wait. So we are now going to bring up Lindsay Latham. Oh, we're going to go down to Lindsay. Everybody else stay put. We're going to weave down to Lindsay. And she is a parent advocate. Her husband, Toby, her son, Calvin, is here. And daughter, Lucy. I see you, Lucy. Lucy, I'm coming. Right. Thank you very much, Lucy's mom.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I'm Lindsay Latham, and this is, do you want to introduce yourself on your talker? No? Okay. This is Calvin, age 11. No? And Lucy, age 6.
Their dad.
So our journey has started about 10 years ago when Calvin was about 1 years old. He was diagnosed with a rare brain malformation called polymicrogyria. And because insurance is insurance, we went down the road of learning about the Medicaid waiver. We're in the state of Virginia, and currently in the state of Virginia, I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you, Calvin. Currently in the state of Virginia, there are 2 types of waivers. So he is eligible for Medicaid based on his disability, and he also receives attendant care. So on top of actually getting additional medical services, he receives attendants who come to our home and assist with bathing, feeding, drinking, toileting. He is weak on his right side, so we he requires a lot of assistance, day-to-day assistance, hands-on assistance, and we were here in 2017 when they wanted to roll back the ACA, and we're here now because we are facing this existential crisis to not only people with disabilities, but families and women and children, and it is unconscionable to think that we are back here fighting for people to have the ability to live their lives and live their lives in a healthy manner. To get Calvin ready for his day, he requires anti-seizure medicines. He takes four in the morning and 4 at night, including drooling medication. And Calvin has 3 insurances. His third insurance is Medicaid. If we didn't have Medicaid, we would have out-of-pocket expenses for all 4 of his medications on a monthly basis, hundreds of dollars a month. My husband and I work full-time. We have good jobs. We worked really hard to get where we are, and we would be devastated. Our family would be bankrupt if we lost Medicaid.
Some of the things that Medicaid paid for just to get here this morning, after taking the morning medications, Calvin has to get in the car. The car seat that he has is specially made for him. Went through both private insurance companies, because it wasn't medically necessary. And do you know who picked it up? Medicaid. And then that chair that he uses as a mobility aid for when he's fatigued, not medically necessary by his private insurance companies. You know who picked it up? Medicaid. His talker, that's $6,500 off the shelf. 2 private insurance companies said it's not medically necessary for our kid who can't communicate without it. You know who picked it up? Medicaid. So to say that Medicaid isn't going to affect families, they're not luxury items. They're not for Calvin. They're what he needs in the classroom. We brought pictures of him this year. We're also advocates in the special education space where there's going to be cuts and impacts based on what this administration is doing. Absolutely. So Calvin and Lucy, Lindsay, all of us, this is a picture of Calvin this year. It was 2 years ago. We were in this tough discussion with the school district about moving him exclusively to a classroom for kids with intellectual disabilities because he could not communicate what he was learning. But we knew that he was picking up subject matter in the classroom, and he had quote-unquote behaviors. And they also wanted to move him out of the gen ed classroom because of the behaviors that he was exhibiting. But we were confident that he was exhibiting the behaviors because he couldn't communicate what he was learning in the classroom like his peers were. So we pushed and pushed and pushed for the supports for him to stay in his gen ed classroom. And that's him acing his first test in his gen ed class, subject matter class, because he got the supports that he needed to use that system of communication to tell his teachers what he was learning in the classroom. Well, there's a gap in the funding. We talk about year after year when the IDEA and its predecessor were passed. Congress promised it's 40%, and we're going to keep coming asking for that 40%, and it's currently at 13, I believe. But there's also resources that people don't know about or don't think about when they talk about cuts to the ed department, which is the research and the best practices, which we as parents can go to and go back to our school systems and say, hey, there's this research backing classroom use of communication devices and effective communication regulations, which allow us as parent advocates to go back to the school system and say, until you're supporting our child and using his mode of communication, we're not moving him out of this gen ed classroom. Because that's the deal we struck with our school district. You do this effectively, and we show that he's not picking up the subject matter, then we'll talk about moving out of the gen ed classroom. But until you do this well, see, he just said he heard a fire engine somewhere. So the Department of Ed cuts in staffing and in the research and the supports, in addition to the Medicaid, it's a whole holistic system of supports that we get from the federal government that people do not think about.
Yeah, one of the reasons that we wanted to be here on the Capitol steps was to give the American people an opportunity to tell their stories, because a budget is just not cold numbers on a piece of paper. It represents our values, and it has deep implications for the American people. And this particular budget will hurt children. It will hurt families. It will hurt veterans. And so we want to thank you for elevating these stories. Thank you for your resilience. Thank you for your presence. Some of my colleagues who serve in this Capitol talk a lot about family values. But that's rhetoric. That's rhetoric if at the same time you're talking about family values, you're undermining American families, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to stand for it. So we really appreciate your presence. I don't know if you have any concluding words.
I would just say that all of this is intersectional. We have funding from Medicaid that goes to the schools across this country that help occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists. That doesn't only affect kids with severe disabilities like Calvin. That affects everyday kids. There might be interventions that are required. Our paraprofessionals, some of them are paid through Medicaid, and it is incredibly important to understand the intersectionality between our schools and our community-based services. The idea that HHS is cutting the budget for people to live in their communities and have supports. The disability community has fought for decades to be in their community, to live in their community. And it has only been 30 years since Olmsted. Not even 30 years since Olmsted. So you're seeing more people in your community. Oh, I'm sorry. Olmsted is a Supreme Court decision, and I'm not the attorney in the family. Toby is.
So going back even further, it's not even since 1975 that kids have been required to be in the school buildings with their peers. 1990 we got the ADA. So all of these laws on the books you want me to hold it closer? Have gotten people with disabilities in our community, so we're seeing them more often, and people are still getting accustomed to it. But Olmsted was a decision in 1999 where the Supreme Court said that under the ADA, folks have rights to have their services and supports provided in the community so they're not segregated. And so for people who are thinking, I didn't see this in my day, it's because you didn't, right? And it's a good thing that's happening, and there are growing pains that go along with it. But we all, as a community, can go through those growing pains together to make sure that kids like Calvin, because that's why we advocate the way we do. I'm an introvert. I don't want to be out here. I'll be dead the rest of the day. My energy will be gone. But we get out here because Calvin is Medicaid. And it's not this myth of this huge group of folks defrauding the government to suck away funds that were paid by taxpayers. No, it's Calvin. Calvin's Medicaid. People like Calvin are Medicaid. And it's our message is always about community. Lindsay grew up in Baltimore. I grew up in North Carolina. We weren't well-to-do families. We made it out because of support from the federal government. I'm a veteran. I did service in the feds with the National Labor Relations Board, trying to protect workers' rights. And through public service, we are now able to advocate and have the time and resources to do it. And we would pay more in taxes if necessary to make sure kids like Calvin could stay in their community, because that's important to us, and it should be important to everybody else.
And thank you for your service to this country. You got an administration that is firing veterans. We should be cherishing our veterans and standing by our veterans and supporting our veterans and their families.
And then we just have a book for each of you called A Day with No Words by Tiffany Hammond. It is a really beautiful experience of a family who are AAC users. This is an AAC. And specifically the autistic community, and we need to lift that voice right now because they in particular are under attack. So we so very much appreciate your leadership and your support and your voice, because a lot of us feel distressed and scared and angry, and it really brings so much hope as we are talking about religion and the week after Easter and what that means in terms of this brings hope. And we are just so thankful that there are voices. So thank you.
This is what it means. this is what it means to be a beloved community. We love one another. We look out for one another. We stand for one another. What courage it takes to come out here and sit with your family and bear your personal story. But why is the poverty that most threatens our nation the poverty of empathy? The poverty of understanding, the poverty of love. We are the wealthiest nation on the world. Families shouldn't have to come every 4 years and beg to preserve programs that should be fundamental to a nation this great. We are a loving society. And I'll be damned, we are going to fight to protect these programs. We are going to fight to protect these services. We are Americans. We stand for each other. We love each other, and we will continue to work together. Thank you all for being out here. Thank you. Leader Hakeem, could you walk that microphone up to Brian Schatz? Ladies and gentlemen, the senator from Hawaii.
And we've got a congressman who has joined us.
Balance the scales here.
That's right.
But, I mean, us senators outnumbering you, man, and there's only 100.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Congressman Gil Cisneros from California.
Yes.
Who served this country in uniform.
I think we should defer to the House member first.
We'll go to Schatz.
No. I think you said okay?
Come on, let's go to Schatz.
Come on, let's all walk upstairs. Let's all walk up.
I'm struck not just by the growing crowd, but the extent to which I see this as a kind of metaphor for the movement and Corey and Hakeem's role in that. And everybody understands what Corey did a couple of weeks ago to take the floor. And I got to say, doing 25 hours is one thing. Doing 25 hours when the last hour is as good or better than the first hour is another thing. But it's honestly more than that, because the metaphor for the movement is everybody, all of us, even those of us in power, are trying to wake up every morning and try to figure out, what is it that I can do? And the real answer is, whatever you can do is what you should do. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And so one thing I want to do is, for those of you who are not capturing this in a live stream and you're just watching this from the bottom of the steps, you are welcome to join up on the steps, because the way I see this is people watch it online. Some people can show up in 3 dimensions. Some people go to the base of the steps, and that's as much comfort as they have. Some people want to step and sit next to the great Cory Booker and the great Hakeem Jeffries and his colleague Brian. And the reason I think this is so...
Don't forget the great Gil Cisneros.
And the great Gil Cisneros. And the reason I think this is such a powerful moment is there is this recognition. Maybe all I have to do is what I can do. Maybe I don't have to fit into some grand strategy, because maybe a movement is faith in strangers. Maybe a movement is about what Cory did, which he stepped out onto the United States Senate floor and said, I don't know when I'm going to have to use the bathroom. I don't know how bad my headache is going to go. And by the way, one of the things that Cory told me in advance was, I don't know if my knees are going to hold up. I don't know if my feet are going to hold up. He is not 38 anymore. He is fit. He is strong. But, man, that's a long time. And he's 39. But the point is, he took a risk, because he didn't know if it was going to look goofy. He didn't know if anyone was going to care. And they did the same thing. Why don't we just sit at the Capitol steps, because the leader, Jeffries, has access to the Capitol steps, and see who's interested. So now we've got 25,000 people watching this on just one platform, and those numbers are going up. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of the highlights of my career in the United States Senate, which was, we were over there in the other chamber on the steps, Cory and I, on Facebook Live, back when Facebook Live was the main platform, and suddenly John Lewis is sitting next to me. and I'm thinking, I'm like floating out of my body going, is that John Lewis sitting next to me and we're talking about the Affordable Care Act? And this is the important thing that Hakeem mentioned, but this is the message for today. All we need is four. All we need is four House members. All we need is four senators on the Republican side to say, I refuse to shut down rural hospitals. I refuse to punish the sick and the disabled and children and the elderly and people who need a little help with their groceries. I refuse to do that. And last time, when we were fighting over the Affordable Care Act, it did feel unwinnable. We had 2 no's, and we needed a third, and everybody understands that John McCain moment. That is not some historical incident that we can all read about like it was not something we participated in. We won that fight because we fought that fight. But fights do not magically line up with vote counts, and we observe them like we're watching our fantasy football team and just rooting our team on. Politics is not a spectator sport. Democracy is not what we have. It's what we do. And so as this movement builds for a pluralistic, fair democracy, we need to understand we're all going to have to take some risks. They took a risk this morning. I want to see everybody online and in person having their back, not because their egos are so dependent on our support of them, but because they're fighting for all of us. They are fighting for the poor and the sick and the disabled and the rural hospitals and the urban hospitals and the kids who need special education and all of us together. This is no longer a partisan question. This is a question of who we are as a country. Are we really going to rob families who are struggling and shovel all that money to the wealthiest people who have ever walked this planet? And so join us on the steps. And if you can't physically join us on the steps, do your online thing and understand that this is the kickoff to one of the most important policy fights that we will see in many, many decades.
Senator Brian Schatz.
Senator Brian Schatz.
Thank you. And we thank you for once again anchoring us in the spirit of John Lewis, because that really is the shoulders that we're standing at this moment when Corey and I talked about heading into this legislative work period and the battles that will be in front of us. We, of course, centered our own experiences with the great John Lewis, and we had the opportunity, along with Gil and Kelly, we've been joined by Congresswoman Robin Kelly from Illinois. Thank you.
And I got to try to keep the Senate score going higher and higher. We're also joined by the great Senator Amy Klobuchar. Come on up.
As you can see, this is a sibling rivalry.
It is a sibling rivalry. The lines that divide us, like the Hudson River, is not as strong as the ties that bind us.
It's great to see Amy joining us, and we'll hear from Amy momentarily. But just to again recenter sort of the spirit of John Lewis and why we all are so inspired by him, our opportunity to serve with him, the lessons that we learned from him. You know, I recall, Corey, the first time that I met John Lewis was on the floor of the House of Representatives. And I see him, he sees me, and he calls me over, and he says, "Are you the new guy?" I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Lewis." He said, "Well, we're colleagues now. You can call me John." I said, "Okay, Mr. Lewis." Because he's an American hero. And then he said, "You from Brooklyn, right?" Now, I got to admit, Amy, I was tempted to say, Brooklyn is always in the house. But instead I said, "Yes, Mr. Lewis." And then he said something to me that was interesting. He said, "Well, I'm hearing some good things about you from your predecessor, but Washington, D.C. can be a tough place, a tough place. So I don't want you to get into any trouble unless it's good trouble."
Yes.
And we're here to get into some good trouble on behalf of the American people.
Yes.
On behalf of the American people.
Necessary trouble.
Necessary trouble. And so let me yield to one of my colleagues, Gil Cisneros, from the great state of California, who served this country in the Navy, wore the uniform, and now is serving this country in the United States House of Representatives. Give it up for Gil Cisneros, joining us all the way from California.
I gotta say, the crowd, like the senator said, the crowd is getting much better.
Just don't know what the hell's going on. You know, they don't know anything, and it's just all chaos. And you know, as we're talking to the colleges, as we're talking to the school districts, they're taking our money, they're taking the funding, the programs. You know, I worked at the Pentagon, and I was the first ever Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer the Pentagon ever had at the Department of Defense, where we did a lot to ensure that we were, you know, taking care of our people of color, the officers, to give them that chance to rise up through the ranks, whether they were, as I said, people of color, or they were women, or they belonged to the LGBTQ plus community, to ensure that they had an equal opportunity to go and succeed, just like everybody else. And that's what DEI is about, right? Yeah. Diversity, equity, inclusion. It's about giving individuals an opportunity, taking those rocks, and shining them up to become diamonds in the rough, to allow them to show their skills, who may not have known, just like people like me. I had no idea, getting out of college, what I was going to, when I graduated from high school, what I was going to do. College, this was not something in my family that people went and did. They didn't have that opportunity. But I got lucky. I joined the Navy out of high school. I saw a chief petty officer who met me and said, I think you should apply for a program. And I have no shame in saying that it was Navy's affirmative action program that allowed me to succeed and gave me the educational opportunity. And whether I succeeded or failed, after that, it was always based on my merit. And that's what it is. And that's what DEI does, right? It allows people to succeed and give them a chance. But right now, what they are doing, this administration, they're taking books out of schools. And I don't know when the book burners have ever been on the right side. Never, right? Never. But that's what they're doing. They're taking books about history. They are taking books out about people of color. They don't want to allow people to succeed. They don't want to allow people to educate themselves. But that is not what we can't allow them to do that, and we're not going to allow them to do that. We need to make sure that we keep fighting for health care. I'm proud to be a veteran. I'm proud to have worked, as I said, at the Pentagon. Federal employees that work their ass off every day to keep this country running, that are overtasked, constantly overtasked, but get the job done and continue to get the job done. And they want to get rid of these hardworking individuals. They want to get rid of our veterans. 30% of federal employees are veterans. They want to get rid of them. We can't allow that to happen because, again, they are hardworking. They serve their country in uniform. They are continuing to serve their country as federal employees. And we need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting that they're getting their health care. Yes. Right? Yes. My dad, my father, a veteran, Vietnam veteran, exposed to Agent Orange, is getting his health care through the VA, but they want to go and they want to cut those resources. They want to take money away from the PACT Act that is out there. One of the great bills that this Congress passed over the last 5 years to make sure that we take care of our veterans, and they want to stop that, and we can't allow that to happen. 40% of the people in my district use Medicaid, but yet they want to do that and they want to get rid of that, and we can't allow that to happen. But the movement, and we all know this, the movement has to start with the people. So you all showing up out here today, you all raising your voices, you all coming out. We need to keep that momentum going. We need to keep it going, right? Are we going to keep it going? Are we going to keep fighting? Are we going to let them know they're not going to take our country? All right. We got to do it. You are the momentum that's going to keep us going. So let them know and let them hear you. And thank you all for coming out. And thank you, Senator Booker, and thank you, Leader Jeffries, for continuing to fight and showing your leadership. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We got a revival here, folks. So this is exactly what I wanted. The crowd is growing. We have speakers coming up. On deck, not next, but on deck is Amy Klobuchar, who as a college football player, you go to the Midwest, you fight against some really tough, big people. It wasn't until I got to the Senate that I think the toughest person from the Midwest is definitely Amy Klobuchar. But one might be a contender. There might be a contender, and Robin, Congresswoman Kelly is after that. But before we do that, we want to keep recentering to how we began almost 6 hours ago. Almost 6 hours ago, just as two of us, Hakeem and I came out there when it was cold. It was about 45 degrees, and we sat down here. We opened up the live stream, and we said that tomorrow, after a 2-week recess, Congress is convening back in these buildings to begin, as the Republicans want to do, to get a bill done that would cut health care from Americans, that would cut support for our seniors, that would cut resources for the disabled, and would cut food from the hungry. And we said that that violates the fundamental moral underpinnings of our nation. Our nation has many faith traditions, but from Jain, Baha'i, Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, throughout the board, every one of our faith traditions talks about loving the neighbor, supporting the poor, providing health care for the sick, every single one. We started talking about our faith journeys growing up in the black church and how Chris Coons was our first guest, sat here and said over 2,000 times the Bible talks about the obligations to be there and to do for the poor. The character of our country is lying in the balance. And that would be wrong enough to cut programs that support millions of Americans. That would be enough. But to do it in order to give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires is wrong and immoral. This is not left or right. This is right or wrong. And so we not only invited members here and members of the clergy here. We've had some incredible people speak, but we wanted to have the authentic voices of the foot soldiers for the very hope and idea of America. That we are a nation, the wealthiest in the world, but our wealth isn't just judged by stockbrokers' accounts or bank accounts, but our wealth is shown by how we elevate human potential, how we love one another, how we make sure that everyone has the fundamental basics to stand upon to reach for their American dream. So right now we have a number of people that are going to pass the mic. I'm going to start with LaMonica Jones from DC Hunger Solutions, which is an anti-hunger program. We're going to also let the mic be passed to Sal Valencia, New Jersey, that great NJ. You have a Mets shirt on. Well, don't worry, most New York sports teams play in Jersey anyway. The Giants and the Jets, that is. Sal Valencia, thank you for being here from the New Jersey School Nutrition Association. And then, of course, Eric Mitchell, president of the Alliance to End Hunger. And then we are grateful that Crystal Fitzsimmons is here, FRAC president. I want you to introduce yourself. Feel free to talk about your own faith journey, why you do the work you're doing, and what your influences are, and then the urgency of this moral moment as it affects the people you serve.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Senator Booker and Leader Jeffries, for one more time.
One more time.
Whatever gets the job done. Thank you again, Senator Booker, Leader Jeffries, for having us all here this morning and for setting an example. You know, we are all privileged and honored to have you lead us here as anti-hunger advocates. Again, my name is LaMonica Jones. I am the Director of State Initiatives for the Food Research and Action Center, more commonly known as FRAC. What that means to most folks, I oversee our work with DC Hunger Solutions, Maryland Hunger Solutions, as well as within New Jersey for New Jersey Food Security Initiative. Every day I hear from district residents, from Maryland residents, as well as from the families and households that we work with in New Jersey about the impacts to SNAP. The district here, we have the highest rate of older adult hunger in the entire nation. The majority of our older adults here are struggling with hunger. These are the individuals that have dedicated their life to work. And when we communicate with them, when we have conversations with them every day, they're struggling to figure out how is it that I can only afford basic necessities. I always say the rent eats first. And so after they've paid their mortgage, after they've paid their rent, they're struggling to figure out how can I afford groceries? How is it that I can afford transportation? How is it I can afford my health care cost? And so when we're having these conversations with individuals, we're working closely in the district to try to figure out how is it that we can make sure that we have the funds allocated to support our households. It's also the same in Maryland. We were dealing with a major deficit, budget deficit in Maryland, a $3 billion deficit, which we advocated really closely with our legislators in order to find means so that we can support our SNAP households. Over 600,000 residents in Maryland are dependent upon SNAP. And so when we look at what those cuts look like from the federal level, we're looking at a large number of individuals that are not going to know how are they going to make their ends meet. How is it that I'm going to feed my family? How is it that I'm going to make sure that my children are able to have healthy school meals every single day? And so fight it's hard and it's long, but something has to be done. When we think about the potential impacts for states to take on these costs for our federal programs, it's detrimental. DC has a nuanced situation that they're dealing with on top of potential cuts. We're heading into what should be budget season here in the district with our local dollars, and we have $1 billion that's being withheld of DC dollars. That's being withheld. That's not allowing us to do what we need to do within the district.
And before you pass the microphone, let me ask you, when you hear them say work requirements for SNAP, what does that mean to you in your program?
So when we talk about work requirements for SNAP, you know, that is flexibilities for our individuals to, where we have high numbers or high percentage of individuals that have to find employment. You know, we have the 3-month requirement that says that after 3 months you have to secure employment. But if you're in a position where you're unable to do so, even after trying, you're going to strip those benefits from someone. I've done everything that I can. I'm trying to find a job. I'm trying to find employment, but you're stripping these benefits from me even after I've done absolutely everything that I can. It's unfair. It's
and it also creates a layer of bureaucracy for you that's additive and costly.
It does. There's so many steps and hoops that individuals have to jump through in order to just feed themselves, just to nourish themselves. And it's challenging when we talk to our students and we're working with them on their SNAP application process, and they're saying, I've done all that I can do. What else do you need me to do? But there's these layers that they have to jump through to say that they need to apply for just our basic necessity. Food is a basic necessity that we all deserve. We all wake up and we all ate today, and it's something that we all should be able to do automatically.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Good.
Over there. Thank you. My name is Sal Valenza. I've been providing food that is delicious and healthy to students that are hungry for over 30 years. When you think about that, students that are hungry can't learn. One of the things that I just saw recently, it said, hunger steals dreams, school meals bring them back. And to look at those programs and talk about taking funding away from them, to me is just a terrible thing that people talk about. When you talk about cutting Medicaid access, People need to understand that Medicaid access being cuts access to school meals for the people as well. Because those students, when they get Medicaid, are directly certified to receive school meals. So these are things that are super important when we look at the budget and need to understand that we're affecting the health of our future. We need to make sure that these students are heard and that we take care of them. One of the things that I talk about a lot when I talk about what we do in schools is that we tend to do things to and for kids and not with them. And I'm just going to throw this back to Senator Booker. I handed you those quotes. Those are all from students that are in your district, and these were collected from Health Corps. So we asked kids what they thought about lunch and why it was important. And these are what kids said. Lunch helps students and families. A lot of kids only get one meal per day. Think about that. How many of you out there get one meal a day? Doesn't happen. How many people there that we're talking about giving tax cuts to get one meal a day? None of them. Students should get free meals because their families may not be able to afford to pay. To make parents decide between whether they're going to feed their kids or pay their rent isn't something that we should ever do. That school meal could be the only school meal that kid next to me eats. You never know what someone else is going through. All right, this is a kid from Newark, and it's just simple. Every child should be nourished. And I'm going to end on that because I think that when we look at what we do with school meals, we're not just nourishing them with food. We're giving them the ability to learn, grow, and have a great life.
We're going to hear from two more advocates. We want to thank them for their powerful testimony. I think it's important to make a point that, America is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Yet it's estimated that there are as many as 50 million Americans who are hungry or food insecure, and millions of children. That's a stain on our society. It's a stain on our society. And this budget goes in the exact opposite direction of where we should be headed. Here in America, it's our view that we shouldn't have a single hungry child, a single hungry veteran, or a single hungry family. And that's the direction that we need to go in the United States of America, not cutting nutritional assistance. So we thank the four of you for your advocacy and look forward to your continued testimony.
Just want to foremost just thank Leader Jeffries and Senator Booker for bringing us here this morning. I woke up a little over before 8 o'clock this morning, logged on. It literally was only 3 of y'all up on stage. So to come down to D.C., I live in Montgomery County, and to come down here and to see this crowd, it's just heartwarming. It just lets us know that this really is a movement of people who really care about these issues. Quick introduction of myself. My name is Eric Mitchell. I am blessed to lead a coalition of over 100 national organizations across many sectors, businesses, universities, nonprofits, international organizations in the fight to end hunger in the U.S. and around the world. The Alliance End Hunger, we are a young organization, relatively speaking, less than 25 years old, but we believe in the collective action, the collective power in building the movement towards goals of ending hunger. Just to kind of give you a stark reality, globally, there's over 750 million people in the world who are suffering from food insecurity in many forms, including children. For the kids who die in the world, die as a result of malnutrition. We're blessed here in this country to have a safety net program of federal nutrition programs to ensure that we do not fall deeper into hunger. But in that perspective, our federal nutrition programs like SNAP only serve 40 million Americans in this country. So as you know, as Leader Jeffries just said, even with what we have right now, it doesn't cover everyone who falls under the threat of food insecurity. And so this program is essential to ensure that we do have the ability for families to be able to make ends meet. It covers across every congressional district, every state in this country, every race. Many of us who go to church, we have folks in our communities and in our congregations who use these programs We have people who work with us, people who go to our schools, who at any given day wake up in the morning not understanding how they're going to feed themselves and their family. I think the stark reality of how important these critical nutrition programs are is when, a few years ago, when we were dealing with COVID and our food banks numbers were swelling because families were literally on the cusp of one paycheck away from not being able to take care of themselves and their families. And so this is critical for us. We need to ensure that we have a budget that puts ending hunger first. This is not a partisan issue. I know we have many Democrats here today, but this is historically has been an issue that's been supported by Democrats, Republicans across the board. A few years ago, Congress passed a bill to make ending hunger a national priority. That was led by Congressman and the late Congresswoman Janet Walorski from Indiana, a Republican. These are issues that we continue to fight in a way to make sure that there is bipartisan solutions to this. This SNAP program alone, it doesn't just the end user, it serves as an economic engine for this country. Farmers, grocery stores, rural communities all benefit from these programs to the point that over $15 billion is put back into the economy when benefits are used.
Say that again.
$15 billion. And so if you want to make America stronger, more prosperous, more secure, you don't do that by ripping the very fabric of this country and taking away the ability to have families who need it the most to be able to feed themselves and their families. So I want to thank y'all for this opportunity. Thank y'all for the leadership.
We want to thank you for speaking truth to power, being here in this sacred civic space to talk about the moral obscenity of poverty in our country and the challenges. We've got one more speaker. Why don't you pass it on there? It is truly a moral obscenity that we have so many children in poverty. What it does to the development of our children, as we had earlier here, one of our great pastors, one of the leaders of the Moral Mondays, Reverend Barber, who talked very pointedly that poverty amongst children is violence. It is violence. And to not stand up and protect our children. But the investment part is key. That $15 billion is a return in measurable financial means. But what does it do? How can you measure the impact on a child and his development and her abilities in the future by having good, nutritious meals? The unlocking of their potential, the opening up of their artistry, the incredibleness of their invention. We don't know how many children we have lost out because in this rich country they have been malnourished and not getting the food that they need to develop. So please, last of this great coalition, this great quartet, you guys can sing a gospel hymnal before you leave. We need some music up on here. And if you guys are up there and want to sit, there's still some spaces behind us. As long as you're in front of those chains, we are good if you want to come up and join and sit with us. We're happy to see this crowd gathering, but go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Booker. Thank you, Speaker Jeffries. And I also want to thank Senator Klobuchar, who is our ranking member on the Senate Agriculture Committee and helping
Yes, my chairwoman.
I'm, again, Crystal Fitzsimons. I'm the interim president for the Food Research and Action Center, and at FRAC, we're working to build a nation free from hunger. We have about 47 million people in this country, that includes kids, who are struggling to put food on the table. And SNAP is a critical resource that helps make sure that families across the country are not going hungry. For every one meal that the charitable sector provides, SNAP provides 9 meals. So we cannot cut the SNAP program. If you cut SNAP, you will actually be creating hunger. You're taking food off the table of families across the country. We know that SNAP is an incredible program. It improves health outcomes. It reduces health care costs by an average of about $14 per person. It improves mental health outcomes. It improves birth outcomes. We know that it's just an incredible, amazing program, and the benefits are actually too low. When people talk about cutting the SNAP benefits, currently they're about $6.20 on average, and what they're talking about taking us back to would be $4.80. Can you imagine trying to feed your family for $6.20 per person per day, and going back to less than $5 is just shocking. All of the proposals that are on the table would either cut benefits, take people off benefits, or make the program harder for states to serve. Cutting the program by $230 billion, I don't even believe that they're talking about cutting it by $230 billion, is going to increase hunger across the country and have devastating effects. We do a lot of story collections from families, and we've gotten lots of stories from veterans, from seniors, from families with kids who are struggling. And the common theme is that this will be devastating to them. They're struggling to make ends meet. We are seeing families really struggle to cover the costs of high food inflation, to cover their rent, and this will just make it even harder for families. So we really need Congress, when they come back tomorrow, to all come together and recommit to ending hunger in the United States. That is a core value for us. If we want kids in this country to thrive, if we want to have a productive workforce, if we want to be safe, if we want to give older Americans and veterans and people with disabilities what they need, we need to end hunger in the United States, and we need to not cut SNAP or any of the other federal nutrition programs.
Thank you very much. Please give it up for these four incredible foot soldiers in the fight against hunger in America.
Fabulous four.
Fabulous four. We know that this administration has already cut Meals on Wheels to our seniors, vital food programs going to our seniors. We know they've already attacked school lunch programs. But we are seeing in this next work period, they're going to begin to go after SNAP. One of the great champions of the fight for SNAP, who knows, as was said so eloquently, that we shouldn't be cutting benefits, we should be investing more in nutrition programs for our children. The highest ranking Senate Democrat on the Agricultural Committee that oversees SNAP, one of my friends and truly one of our great champions in America, Amy Klobuchar. Amy.
Thanks, Corey. I love that this, I'm losing my voice out here. You'd think I was out here at 6 a.m., but I love that this started with 2 people, and then 3 people, and then 5 people, and now all of you, and it's only going to grow during the day, because that's what organizing is about. And I want to thank Corey, I want to thank Hakeem, and all the members that are out here, but I mostly want to thank the people that just turned on their stream in the morning, saw it, and decided to come out here. Because what's going on in this country right now is going to take everyone to stand up. There's a reason it's sunny on this day, because that sunshine to go right into this Capitol. We need this sunshine to be showing what these guys are doing right now and the horror of what is happening in our country. So I just spent, which is why I lost my voice, I went on a 19-county tour in our own state. And the people that showed up there maybe aren't on this live stream right now. They are people that just finally realized what was happening to them. Because what's happening right now is not just happening in our urban areas. It is happening in our rural areas in a big way. They are dependent on these food programs and SNAP. And the farmers that produce the food that goes to the schools, that goes to the school lunches, that goes to the SNAP programs are just hanging on an edge. And you know what? The big guys can handle this, okay? The big guys, whether it's in agriculture or whether it's CEOs going to the White House or whether it's investment bankers having people in, the little guys, the little farmers, the soybean farmer I met with in rural Minnesota, the woman who runs a little company called Busy Babies, they aren't invited to those rooms. They don't know how to deal with this. So when their mom can't get into assisted living because they're cutting Medicaid, or when there's the tariffs, these across-the-board tariffs that are affecting their businesses, they don't have any margin to rely on. So that's why this is a social justice issue. This is an economic issue. And when you look at what's happening right now in farm country, they're waking up. I was one of our smaller town halls, and a woman was there, maybe would have been one of you, holding a sign that said, "This is not normal." And the farmer sitting next to her has never been to one of these things. He looks at her and goes, "I'm normal." And she goes, "No, no, no. That's not what I mean. She's like, this is not normal what's happening right now, but there's a lot of normal people, whoever you are, that are affected. He goes, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. Those quiet voices that don't always talk, they're rising up right now. They're rising up right now, and they're showing up. So the people that are watching on the live stream, to make sure you talk to someone that doesn't always go to these things and talk to them about hunger and what we're seeing in our country. Tell them what's the truth. Costs are up. Chaos is up. Corruption is up under this administration. And that's why these sit-ins and people coming out and getting out of their shells and having the hope that we can have a better world is so important right now. And I want, when people say, what are you doing to fight? You got to ask yourself, what am I doing to fight? And a lot of you are standing out here right now and will join us. But I can tell you right now, we are fighting this in the courts, right? We're fighting it in the courts where 90 judges, Republican-appointed judges, Democrat-appointed judges are standing up and saying, no, this is unconstitutional. We are fighting it in Congress where all it takes, as Hakeem and Corey know, to have 4 Republicans stand up in the House, 4 Republicans stand up in the Senate and say, no, we're not going to do these tariffs. We're not going to cut Medicaid. We're not going to take lunches away from kids. Remember that number. 4 Republicans is all it takes. And then finally we are fighting it with our constituents by our side. And that is all of you. So I want to thank you for turning out today. I hope you talk as much as I did, so I lost my voice. But I hope you do it so you share it with everyone else. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Hakeem. Keep up the great work. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Senator Amy Klobuchar. We're so thankful for the senator, the great senator from the great state of Minnesota. You know, when we stand up for SNAP, we're standing up for rural America and urban America and suburban America and small town America and the heartland of America. We're standing up for families and we're standing up for farmers. We want to make that clear. Families and farmers. That's who we're out here standing up for all across America. We're now going to hear from two members of the United States House of Representatives.
We had one. You wanted to make one last comment.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Really just packages what Senator Klobuchar just said. Yeah, I'm a House alum as well. I used to work for Congressman John Lewis.
That's why he's allowed to do this.
And he'll often say, you know, we got to get in the way and get in good trouble. And this is what it is. But y'all who are online and are out here in the crowd, what I urge y'all to do is go back to your congressional leaders, your members of Congress, and tell them, repeat just exactly, that you will not allow them or want them support any legislation that cuts these drastically cuts these programs. Put the pressure on our elected officials. That's what they need to do. They need to hear from y'all. They need to hear from y'all back at home, not just here in D.C., but back at home in your communities. Tell them what programs do to your lives and how it will impact you and their constituencies. That's how we put the pressure on to make sure that policy moves in the right direction. Thank y'all again.
Yeah, so just to drive Eric's point home, we want to actually flood the emails for all the members of Congress as they come back to Monday, because they're all returning from recess tomorrow. We want all of their inboxes to be flooded. If you go to frac.org, frac.org, and go to our Action Network, you can actually find an email that you can easily send and tailor however you want to go to your members of Congress, to your representatives and your senators. So I encourage you to do that, because the only way we are going to make this happen and push back on these proposals is for people to hear, for our elected officials to hear what a big deal this is and that people are paying attention and that they care.
Sorry about that. So we also really need to let the USDA know that we need our local food for schools money back. They took that away. That's hurting the farmers. That's hurting the kids. We need local food for schools money back.
All right, now I'm going to yield to a good friend of mine, my big sister in the United States House of Representatives from the great state of Illinois, but she was born in New York. Congresswoman Robin Kelly.
I just want y'all to know I came the furthest. I started off in Boston watching you. Yes, yes, yes. And I flew in because I'm going to the Victory Fund to support our LGBTQ plus community. But I just wanted to thank Senator Booker and my little brother, my fantastic leader in the House, for what you are doing today and how you have gathered all of us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It takes leadership, and you two are great leaders, along with Senator Klobuchar. In my district is urban, suburban, and rural. I start on the south side of Chicago through the suburbs, and I have 4,500 little farms in my district. 4,500. The girl from Harlem, 4,500 farms in my district. So I hear all the sides. And my parents had a mom and pop grocery store. So I know, as a gentleman said, how it's all connected. If people can't buy food, the grocery stores, don't hire as many people. They can't buy as much from my farmers. Illinois is #1 in soybeans. Their #1 customer is China. So you don't think the tariffs are hurting my farmers? Cutting USAID is hurting farmers across the country. Then if you cut SNAP, that adds, insult to injury. But I really want to thank, like the senator and my leader and my other colleagues have said, thank all of you, because as Martin Luther King said, the day comes to an end when good people don't speak up. And we are fighting with one arm tied behind our back, maybe two arms, but we're going to start kicking if it's necessary. But we need you to be there with us. We are partners in this struggle. We are partners in this struggle. We are all in this together. So don't forget that your voices really do count. So we do need you to call your representatives, not even the federal ones, on every level, to let them know that you are watching and that you vote. And I just want to say, last but not least, in my district, if Medicaid is cut, I have 753,000 people in my district. 300,000 people will be affected. 190,000 people will be affected by SNAP. That's just my district alone. If they continue with the Department of Education, almost 7,000 teachers will lose their jobs. So I need you. I need you fighting with me, and I've been fighting, and the leader puts us to work. I've had town hall meetings, tele-town hall meetings, meeting with my school superintendents, every single thing that I can do to encourage everybody to speak up. So thank you for being here. Thank you guys for your leadership. You are the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin Kelly. Thank you, Robin, from Boston all the way down here. We thank her. Thank you, Amy Klobuchar.
Thank you, Amy.
All right.
Robin.
You can come up to the Capitol steps if you want to sit here. I know the crowd's getting big, but I want to thank little Catherine. How old is Catherine? 4 years old. She came out here and delivered me this gift of a picture. Thank you, Catherine. We love your picture. I'm saving this from the day. Who's next up?
So next up, we've been joined by another distinguished member of the United States House of Representatives, one of our newer members, but he's off to a tremendous start. He represents the great state of Rhode Island, and in fact, I believe is the first Ghanaian American ever elected to the House of Representatives, Congressmember Gabe Amo.
Thank you, Leader. All right. I'm so grateful for your leadership, Senator. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you really to everybody who's out here. I spent the last couple weeks having a lot of conversations with people at home, and they're afraid. They're scared. They're not scared because of, the craziness of these cuts. They're scared because of what it means to our values. Our values. What do we stand for? So, you hear government programs all the time. Medicaid can be abstract. To me, it means dignity for those with disabilities. For me, it means that the nursing homes that care for so many people are well funded. For me, it means that those women who are about to have babies have the certainty that they will have coverage. For me, it means so many things, and we have to continue to speak to those values. What do we stand for? A budget A budget is a symbol of our values. So I sit on the Budget Committee in the House of Representatives and heard from Republican after Republican say, we're not going to make these cuts, but yet vote against amendments that would simply state that they shared our values, the values of Democrats, the values of Americans to protect those who need our help the most. And over again, they have said the opposite. And they have done the opposite of what the American people want from them. So in Rhode Island, when I think about this, I think about Al, who came to one of my town halls and said to me, Gabe, I'm scared. And everybody has someone in their life who will be affected by draconian cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. But they aren't just government programs. They are about our values. And so there is no better day than Sunday to reflect on values. Values that we have taught across our faith traditions in our households, that we get from the sacred documents that form this nation. Values. And so over and over and over again, I will ask this week when I see Republican colleagues, where are your values? Who do you stand for? Billionaires or Social Security recipients? Do you stand with big corporations, or do you stand with those children who need health care in your district? Because the choice...
You know the wait times. You know how long it takes to be seen for sometimes the most rudimentary of things, sometimes for serious trauma, gunshot wounds, loss of a pregnancy. You've been there, you've seen it, you've felt it, you know it. Cutting preventative care to get out ahead of these problems in the emergency room will only burden the emergency room that much more. Volumes will go up, wait times will go even longer, and you may not get seen in a timely fashion. I don't think we deserve that in this country.
No. And the most expensive care, it's far more costly for America. It's far more, not costly, far more wise, fiduciarily wise, to give people access to preventative care than it is to deal with them later. Now, I'm going to walk down these steps to just bring us to one of the most extraordinary things I remember from the healthcare fight in 2017 was the people that came to lobby, Congress people and senators. And they called themselves the little lobbyists. They were beautiful children who happened to have disabilities. But truly their superpower was their courage. I watched them in their wheelchairs. I watched them move around and go right up to senators and speak truth to power, go right up to people, and not with hate in their voice, but with a heart of redemption and grace. Please do not cut the services that I rely on. They were the most effective lobbyists there are. I'd like to say that we changed John McCain's vote by the persuasiveness of the voices of his fellow senators, but it wasn't the case. It was the people telling their stories, and none more powerful people than the little lobbyists here. And I don't know who I'm giving the microphone to, but I think I'm giving it to you. Would you introduce yourself?
Elena Hug. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You're talking about 2017, and I just want to give a shout out. I see so many of you from 2017 who are here fighting for health care. I see you. I thank you. And those of you who are joining us in 2025, we have been waiting for you. So I just want to introduce us real quick. We are the Little Lobbyists. We are a family-led organization for children with complex medical needs and disabilities. And in 2017, I was watching the news like everybody else, but I wasn't hearing my story being told. And I kept thinking, who's going to tell my story? Who's going to tell my story? And then I thought, oh, I'll tell my story, right? So our story is 10 years ago, I had an amazing birth. And then 15 minutes later, my baby was rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit, where she remained for the next 5 months of her life. She was diagnosed with a number of serious medical conditions affecting her airway, lungs, heart, and kidneys. She uses a tracheostomy to breathe and a ventilator for additional respiratory support, a feeding tube for all of her nutrition, and a wheelchair to get around. I am so pleased to tell you that Xiomara, the joy of my life, is thriving today. She's thriving. She's 10 years old, double digits club, and in the 4th grade, and she is just the joy of my life. And she is thriving, and I want to be very clear, in great part because of the access to health care, and specifically because of Medicaid. So, and families like mine wanted to share our story. Children with complex, oh, hi! 2017, right there. Wanted to tell our stories that children with complex medical needs and disabilities rely on Medicaid to live at home, to go to school, to be in the community. You know, it wasn't that long ago that a child like mine would have been automatically institutionalized. Automatically. For being disabled, for needing a ventilator. Children with ventilators didn't come home. But thanks to Medicaid, Xiomara gets to grow up at home, gets to grow up with her big brother. So that's what Medicaid means. And I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to some of our little lobbyist family. We have families across the country, and some of them came to D.C. in 2017. And 18, and 20, right? And the thing that we share, we have experienced the joys and challenges of raising disabled children. We know what is possible because we see it. We live it every day. Thanks to Medicaid, we know what is possible. Which means we also know what is at stake. We know what we might lose. We are so close to losing it, and that's why we're here. This is my very, very dear friend, Jamie Davis-Smith, who we have roamed the halls of Congress together many, many times. And I am so honored that you're here, and I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thanks. Well, I can't believe we have to be here again. As Elena said, Little Lobbyists started in 2017 when a group of parents who didn't really know what we were doing decided to walk the halls of Congress and tell our own stories and how much our disabled children rely on Medicaid and the joy they bring to our lives and how happy they are, how happy we are to have them at home. And this is my daughter, Claire. She's a very happy young adult now who loves her daddy very much. And thanks to Medicaid and the home and community-based supports that we've been able to access, Claire has been able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive at home with her siblings, go to the playground with them, go to movies, just our family go to school. Medicaid has helped pay for her wheelchair, which needs to be replaced periodically as she grows, special equipment she needs at home to be able to sit at the dinner table with us and attend school with her peers. And we can't let that go. It's what Claire deserves. It's what we all deserve. And so we really need to pay families like ours all across the country deserve it. And I wanted to briefly tell the story of a dear friend of mine in Pennsylvania who couldn't be here today, but she grew her family through adoption, and she adopted two wonderful children, four total, but two wonderful children with disabilities who she adopted out of foster care. And the reason she was able to do that is because Medicaid. She could take care of these children and commit to caring for them because she knew Medicaid would help with their medical care. And Medicaid is really what's enabled her to really care for her family and these children in the way they deserve to be cared for. And in her adoption and foster care communities, there's a lot of talk about how without Medicaid, a lot of these children will just continue to languish in foster care because families won't have the resources that they need to care for these children who are currently in foster care. And that's a travesty. That's not who we are as Americans. We need to take care of the most vulnerable members of our society, including our disabled children. So thank you all for being here, and I think Claire's dad wants to say something.
Well, I would just add that many Americans, I suspect, were probably like I was. You know, before Claire was born, I didn't really know much about what Medicaid was, what Medicaid did. And, you know, if you told me about kind of the program that Elena just spoke about, which is a kind of initiative by Ronald Reagan to help people like our daughters and our children stay at home with us instead of being institutionalized, I wouldn't have known the first thing about it. But I also didn't realize that the health insurance that I had was woefully inadequate to kind of cover the needs that my family would have when Claire was born. I had, at that time, the health insurance plan that was most prevalent, most common in the metropolitan area where I'm from. So it wasn't some weird plan. When, you know, Claire didn't walk until age 3. When we needed physical therapy so she could learn how to walk, the plan said, well, we don't cover that. We cover rehabilitative physical therapy, not habilitative physical therapy. And because she's never known how to walk, we won't pay for that. That was a surprise and nothing I expected. When Claire needed genetic testing, you know, as was recommended by the genetics clinic at the Children's Hospital that we had, you know, where Claire sees, you know, many doctors, the answer was, well, we're not sure how that's going to help treat her. That just seems like some curiosity you have as to what the genetic condition you have that your daughter has because you haven't been able to identify it through means other than genetic testing. And, you know, many of you probably think that if you need to buy a wheelchair, that your health insurance will cover that as well. You may be surprised by just how much durable medical equipment it costs and how low your benefit is. And so you're kind of talking about, you know, for us, we have health insurance. I never thought that Medicaid was for people who have health insurance, but as it turns out, it is. You know, I've never been more grateful of kind of my fellow Americans and the federal government than I have been since I've received Medicaid, and the incredible amounts of money that it's provided. You know, Claire has thoughts on this too. I love you too. The incredible amount of resources that have been dedicated to my daughter to make sure that she can be as happy as she can and frankly be alive today. And I just think that oftentimes there are a lot of programs out there, and I don't think Medicaid's the only one, that we don't realize it actually covers all Americans, not just uninsured Americans, Americans with insurance. Yeah. And I don't really think that most Americans actually want to stop services. I don't think they realize that they're covered by Medicaid. When they're going to be in a tough situation, it'll be there for them. I don't know that they realize it covers, you know, special education services to our schools. Your schools will be unfunded if Medicaid is cut. And, you know, all I can say is myself and Adam, we're both very, very grateful for everything everyone's doing today to fight to save Medicaid. We're very optimistic because we think Medicaid's an important program for all of Americans, and we think we're going to come together and, you know, leadership in the House and the Senate, and hopefully a change of heart maybe in the executive branch. We think we're going to be able to turn this thing around.
thank you for being here, the family. I'm sorry that you have to come down here and fight for what should be basic like ours. To hear that there are children in foster care that their parents and their families want them, but they just don't have the resources to take care of them. And so for you to do this, as I said earlier, the biggest, most costly, most threatening poverty in America is a poverty of empathy, is people not understanding what their fellow Americans are struggling with, and not because we can't afford it, not because we're not the richest nation on the planet, but because we're not prioritizing. And the reason why Hakeem and I came out here nearly 7 hours ago was to try to center stories like yours, open up a live stream, and hope that more Americans, tens of thousands of Americans, will watch and hear these stories and understand what we're fighting for, and ultimately do what this courageous little lobbyist is doing, is to say, if this little lobbyist can come down to Congress, can fight, then I can come down and talk to my congressperson, talk to my senator, let my voice be heard. You do not stand alone. You are not alone. We love you, we see you, and we will fight for you. Now, Cole, I've heard about you, sir. I am so happy that you are here. I am so grateful for you as one of the great little lobbyists. Your T-shirt, look at that great T-shirt with the American flag here. Can I say hello to you? Can I shake your hand? Do you want to say hello to everybody?